My dad treats my cousin like his own daughter, even going so far as to create a college fund just for her. Meanwhile, I give my cousin a gift and hope the bomb goes off when she grows up. There has always been constant conflict in our house regarding my cousin Mary. I'm the youngest daughter of my dad and have two older brothers, Brett and Jason, who are twins. The three of us have always agreed that our dad loves Mary more and prioritizes her over us. This might sound childish to complain about, but imagine spending your whole life being overshadowed and compared to your cousin, who, honestly, isn't that remarkable to begin with. Mary is a year younger than me, and the only child of my uncle and aunt. Naturally, they adore her and shower her with affection, which is completely understandable. What really bothers us is how much our dad pampers Mary. It seems like he loves her more than us, always buying her whatever she wants and giving her more attention. This favoritism has been a sore spot for my brothers and me, making us feel ignored and undervalued since we were little. When I started school, I was in the same grade as Mary despite being a year older. Both my dad and my uncle wanted us to grow up together, so they pushed us to spend time together constantly. Every morning, my dad would wake me up super early to get ready, then drive to my uncle's house to pick up Mary before dropping us both off at school. I never understood why she couldn't just take the bus like other kids. If my dad only had to drop me off, I wouldn't have to wake up so early. Whenever I asked him about this, he would tell me to stop being selfish and to treat Mary like my sister. This only made me more frustrated, as if my feelings didn't matter. At school, Mary would constantly bother me to play with her or spend time with her. Unlike me, she was introverted and didn't have many friends, while I enjoyed spending time with my own friends. This often made Mary unhappy. Every day after school, when my dad came to pick us up, Mary would complain to him if I hadn't spent lunch with her. My dad would then scold me for not including my little sister, as he called her, while I just rolled my eyes and ignored him. It really annoyed me how much favoritism he showed her over his own kids. If you're wondering if my uncle and aunt saw any issue with this, they didn't. My dad and uncle have always been very close, being only a year and a half apart in age. They grew up together, with my uncle teaching my dad how to ride a bike, shave, and change the car oil. Their own dad wasn't really present, so they leaned on each other for support and always had each other's backs. That's why they always pushed for our two families to spend time together. At first, my older brothers told me that Mom didn't like spending so much time with my uncle and aunt, but she didn't have much choice since they visited our house frequently. Whenever she tried to talk to Dad about it, he dismissed her feelings, saying that family should stick together and that he enjoyed spending time with his brother. Mom didn't mind Dad being with his brother, but she felt obligated to socialize because my aunt also came along. Sometimes people just don't click, and Mom didn't enjoy spending time with my aunt every day. She found her too talkative, overly familiar, and flirtatious with men. This was understandable since my aunt and uncle had an open marriage at the time, meaning they could flirt and sleep with whoever they wanted. My aunt often shared details about her various affairs with my mom, which made her uncomfortable since she didn't believe in such relationships. She also felt it was inappropriate to discuss these things in a house with kids. Whenever my aunt and uncle visited, Mom would send Brett and Jason to play with the neighborhood kids to avoid them overhearing these adult conversations. Dad, on the other hand, had no issues with their open marriage and laughed at their adventurous stories. The year Mom got pregnant with me, my aunt confessed to her that she also wanted to conceive. However, she and my uncle had been struggling with infertility since they got married. After hearing from doctors that they might never have children, they were heartbroken and often argued. Eventually, they decided to stay married but have an open relationship to explore other connections while remaining committed to each other. Despite this, my aunt admitted that she still longed for a child of her own. Mom encouraged her to consider alternatives like adoption or IVF. Although these options were expensive, they were viable paths to building a family. When I was born, Mom experienced complications and tragically passed away due to blood loss. My brothers have told me how traumatic that time was for everyone, grieving Mom's death while celebrating my safe arrival, just as she would have wanted. Dad, however, was inconsolable. He refused to leave her side and sat next to her, unable to process her passing. I can't imagine how much it hurt, but he has never shown resentment or blamed me in any way, even though I wouldn't blame him if he did. I wish Mom were alive. I miss her all the time. Even though I never got to know her, my brothers have so many stories about her, while I only know her through photographs. The first year after my birth was challenging for Dad and my brothers as they adjusted to caring for me. Despite this, Dad took the lead, and my brothers followed his example. These three men have always been there for me unconditionally. I don't remember a single day when my brothers fought with me. Growing up, they took me everywhere with them and treated me like their little sidekick. Even when playing video games, they let me sit beside them to watch. They've never argued with me over food and always let me have the biggest slice of pizza if I wanted it. I've always had priority for the bathroom because they understand there are days when I might need it more. I know siblings can be mean and annoying sometimes, but mine are complete sweethearts. They treat me like a princess. While I've heard many stories from friends about siblings fighting, I've never experienced that because my brothers are calm and sensible. The worst we've ever argued about was a movie, and we quickly settled it with a simple vote. Our bond has always been harmonious, and I feel lucky to have such loving brothers. After my mother passed away, my uncle and aunt were always there for us while we were growing up. Fortunately, my aunt became pregnant just a few months after I was born. The news of her pregnancy was a source of joy for everyone in our family, especially considering the long struggle my aunt and uncle had gone through trying to conceive. When Mary was born, she and I spent a lot of time together, as we were only a year apart, and both my dad and uncle wanted us to bond from an early age. At first, I enjoyed spending time with Mary, but when you're forced to spend time with someone every single day, you quickly start to lose interest. When I started school, I made new friends and naturally began spending less time with Mary. However, both my dad and my uncle expected me to always be there for her and look after her. Mary had a tendency to be very whiny and overly dramatic. Growing up as an only child, she never learned to share and was always very possessive of her belongings. Unfortunately, my uncle and aunt never corrected this behavior, and it continued well into her school years. Mary would argue with anyone who tried to borrow her pencil or eraser. Whenever she had a disagreement with a classmate, she would throw a tantrum on the floor. Naturally, kids don't like others who behave that way, so they began excluding her from their games or avoiding her on the playground. When she complained to her parents about it, they blamed the teacher or the other students for not being inclusive instead of addressing their daughter's flaws. Being forced to spend so much time with Mary made it hard not to lose patience with her. It wasn't easy to get along. If she wanted to watch a specific TV show, I had to watch it, even if I didn't like it. If she wanted to eat at a particular restaurant, I had to agree, or she'd throw a fit. If I was invited to a birthday party that she wasn't, my aunt would pressure my dad to convince me to bring Mary along so she could make new friends. This exhausted me, and I often argued with my dad about how draining it was to always accommodate her. Mary also had an annoying habit of showing interest in the boys I liked. If she saw me getting close to a guy, she would approach him and introduce herself as my sister, emphasizing how close we were. Then she'd proceed to tell embarrassing childhood stories about me, as if they were conneries, if they were funny. When my brothers graduated from high school, they already knew that Dad didn't have enough savings to send them to college. As a result, both of them worked hard to earn partial scholarships, which helped significantly. They also had to take out student loans to complete their education. It was expected that I would follow in their footsteps and hopefully secure a scholarship as well. By the time I was approaching my own high school graduation, I knew I needed to work on my grades and start applying to good universities. During my last 2 years of high school, I cut back on the time I spent with friends and focused more on studying. Mary would often text or call me to hang out, but I ignored her requests. She insisted that people our age needed to have fun and that I was wasting my time in the library. The year I graduated, I received acceptance letters from two of my favorite universities and had to choose between them. I was also considering applying to a university the following year that wasn't among my current options. However, one of the universities that accepted me happened to be in the same city as Mary's. Naturally, my family expected me to choose that university. Mary was excited, telling me how she couldn't wait to get an apartment with me so we could attend classes together and have fun. I found it a bit ridiculous. I liked my cousin, but I didn't want to spend my entire college life stuck with her against my will. So, I chose the other university, without discussing it with my dad. Since I had a scholarship and was taking out loans in my own name, the decision was essentially mine. When my dad found out, he was furious. He tried to force me to change my decision, but I stood my ground, saying it was my life and my choice. He expressed his disappointment, accusing me of deliberately choosing another university just to avoid spending time with Mary. He tried to convince me that having a sister like Mary was the best thing in life. Frustrated, I told him I already had siblings, my brothers, and I loved spending time with them. I asked him to stop forcing me to spend time with Mary because I was now an adult and needed to make my own decisions. Both my aunt and uncle also expressed their disappointment. They called to tell me how much Mary had looked forward to living with me and how it would have improved her college experience. But I didn't care. I was happy with my choice of university. One day, while I was packing my things into boxes and preparing to move to my dorm, I heard my aunt's car pull up. This wasn't unusual, as she sometimes visited my dad after my brothers moved out, either to spend time with him or to cook for us. Usually, during her visits, I'd leave the house to avoid her. But this time, I was home, so I locked myself in my room and stayed silent, hoping my dad would think I was asleep and not call me to join them. I could hear them talking and laughing downstairs. Curiosity got the better of me, so I cracked open my door and strained to listen. I heard something about a college fund, which immediately caught my attention. I tiptoed downstairs and eavesdropped more closely. I heard my dad telling my aunt that he had been saving money for Mary's college fund for a while now, assuring her that Mary would never have to take out a loan because he had it covered. This revelation stunned me. I stood there wondering what my dad was talking about. He had never mentioned a college fund for me or my brothers, so why would he create one for my cousin? I felt deeply hurt, questioning why my dad would make financial arrangements for Mary's education without discussing it with me or considering my own financial situation. I tiptoed back upstairs and called my brothers to ask about it. They were just as shocked as I was and asked if I was sure about what I had heard. I assured them I was. The three of us tried to understand Dad's decision, but none of us had any clue. That's when a thought clicked in my mind. I spoke freely with my brothers and asked the question that had been lingering in my heart. Do you think Mary could be Dad's daughter? My brothers were momentarily silent. Then Jason spoke first, initially dismissing the idea as impossible. However, Brett remained quiet for a moment. When Jason urged him to share his thoughts, Brett admitted he had harbored similar suspicions in the past. There seemed to be no other explanation for why Dad was unusually close to his brother's daughter. Brett pointed out physical similarities between Mary and us, such as our dark brown hair inherited from Dad, which was different from our uncle's blonde hair. Though such resemblances could be purely genetic, we knew there was something about Dad's behavior toward Mary that had always felt puzzling. I made a decision and told my brothers I was going to find out the truth. When they asked how, I said I planned to discreetly obtain a strand of Mary's hair and have a DNA test done. We needed to get to the bottom of this mystery. If she wasn't Dad's daughter, great. There'd be nothing to worry about. But if she was, we needed to know the truth. Brett and Jason reluctantly agreed. I felt guilty as I collected the sample, like I was doing something wrong. But my need to uncover the truth outweighed my discomfort. The anticipation during the week it took to get the DNA results was exhausting. I kept hoping and praying my suspicions were wrong because I had no idea how I'd handle it if Mary turned out to be my sister. Finally, the day came, and I received the results. To my shock, they confirmed that Mary was, in fact, my sister. We shared the same biological father. Reading the result felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I was overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, confusion, disbelief, anger, and sadness, all at once. I couldn't believe Dad had kept such an important secret from us for so long. The revelation that Mary was actually my half-sister, not my cousin, changed everything for me, and I struggled to accept this new reality. I felt betrayed by Dad for hiding this from us, and angry at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. Clearly, Dad and my aunt had spent too much time together and probably had an affair. It was disturbing to process the fact that Mary was born just a year after me, meaning Dad had an affair with his brother's wife within a year of my mom's death. The thought disgusted and overwhelmed me. It also explained why Dad had always forced me to spend time with Mary, even when I needed space. I called my brothers in tears, and they immediately noticed something was seriously wrong. When I shared the news that Mary was our half-sister, they were too shocked to speak for several minutes. I sent them photos of the DNA test results so they could see for themselves. Brett and Jason were furious and insisted on coming home so we could confront Dad together and get to the bottom of this. But I knew confronting Dad about such a repulsive revelation wouldn't change anything. He had slept with his brother's wife, resulting in Mary's birth. There was nothing we could say to change that truth. Instead, I suggested we cut ties with him. Clearly, Dad hadn't done much for us and had left us to fend for ourselves, taking out student loans to pay for college while he saved money for his affair baby. Brett agreed with me, while Jason was still processing the news. After uncovering the secret, I decided we could have a little fun exposing the truth. I devised a plan to reveal the secret to Mary in a subtle but impactful way, ensuring Dad could no longer escape the consequences. I asked my brothers not to tell Dad anything for now, and instead to come on the day I was moving to college because I didn't want to leave with Dad. They agreed immediately. On the day of my departure, I invited Mary over to say goodbye. When she arrived, Dad, as always, was overly excited to see her and gave her a warm hug. During my conversation with Mary, she excitedly shared her plans to move into an apartment and mentioned how her mom had recently revealed a secret college fund she had set up for her years ago. I couldn't help but laugh internally and roll my eyes, fully aware of the truth behind it all. Mary was thrilled about how helpful the fund would be for her future and boasted about how her mom had managed to save thousands of dollars so she wouldn't have to worry about taking out loans like I did. When my brothers arrived to help me pack, they didn't even properly greet Dad. The tension was thick, and my dad must have noticed it too. He tried to approach them, but they ignored him. This was a stark contrast to how we had always been. We had always treated him with respect. However, after discovering his secret, we couldn't look at him the same way. As we finished packing, I turned to say goodbye to my dad. He tried to hug me, but I stepped back awkwardly, avoiding the embrace. He stopped and looked hurt, asking if something was wrong. That's when I looked him in the eye and told him, "I wish Mom were here." He seemed confused and wounded, but I didn't care. After the kind of secret he had kept, I wanted to lash out and scream at him. However, I managed to hold back my anger. Instead, I hugged Mary to say goodbye and handed her an envelope, instructing her to open it in front of my dad after I had left. She nodded, seemingly understanding, and bid me farewell. As I drove away, I felt a swirl of emotions, relief, sadness, and a tinge of guilt. I knew the revelation would throw our family into chaos, but the truth had to come out. Mary needed to know the burden of the secret we now knew about her mother and our dad. As an additional step, I sent a photo of the DNA results to my uncle, ensuring he wouldn't be left in the dark. Within half an hour, my phone was flooded with calls. My brothers received multiple calls too, mostly from my aunt and dad, clearly trying to justify their actions. None of us answered. Eventually, my uncle called, and I decided to pick up because I knew how shocked he must have been after reading the results. He asked directly if the test was fake. It broke my heart to tell him I wished it were. I explained how the news had shattered the image my brothers and I had of our dad when we found out. My uncle took a deep breath and asked if I was okay. His genuine concern broke me, and I started crying. My uncle had always been a significant figure in our lives, and I hated having to be the bearer of such terrible news. Despite his own shock and pain, he comforted me, reassured me that I had done nothing wrong, and thanked me for revealing the truth. Update 1. The aftermath. The fallout from revealing the truth has plunged my family into utter chaos. I've learned that Mary and my uncle moved out of their house quickly after the revelation, wanting nothing to do with my aunt. Meanwhile, my aunt's reaction has been volatile and painful. She bombarded me with a barrage of messages, ranging from abusive accusations to attempts to justify her affair with my dad. In one of her messages, she even blamed me for ruining her marriage and claimed my mother would be ashamed of me for trying to hurt and destroy the family. As for my dad, he has remained completely silent since that day, refusing to acknowledge his wrongdoing. I haven't received a single message or call from him, and honestly, I'm fine with that. There's nothing he could say that would make me forgive him. Although I know deep down that revealing the truth was the right thing to do, the guilt still weighs heavily on me. I never wanted to cause such devastation within my family, but the truth needed to come out eventually, no matter the consequences. Update 2. On apologizing to Mary, many of you suggested I reach out and apologize to Mary, but I've decided not to. To be honest, I will never see Mary as my half-sister. While it's clear that my dad had an affair with her mom, she will always just be my cousin to me. That doesn't mean I harbor any hatred toward her. I don't. I was forced to care for her and play with her growing up, which may have built up some resentment. But I genuinely hope she finds happiness and heals from all of this. Additionally, some of you have mixed opinions about why I cut off my dad and think I should listen to his side of the story. Why would I do that? Imagine your parents slept with their sibling's spouse, had a child, and kept it a secret for years while forcing you to befriend your cousin just so they could spend time with that child. Would you be okay with that? Because I can't be. I've thought it over carefully, and I cannot accept such betrayal and deception. Update 3. Closure with my uncle. Recently, my uncle and Mary visited me at college. I was nervous to see them, but as soon as my uncle saw me, he gave me a warm hug, which eased some of my tension. When Mary and I greeted each other, it was polite but awkward. As we sat down to talk, my uncle informed me that he had cut all contact with my dad since the day of the revelation. While it was sad to hear, it wasn't unexpected given the circumstances. He shared that he was filing for divorce from my aunt and asked if she had been in touch with me. I showed him some of the messages she had sent me, which enraged him. He took pictures of the messages and assured me that he and his divorce lawyer would handle it. I was surprised to learn he had already hired a divorce lawyer. My uncle explained that he couldn't stay with her after how she had betrayed him. Mary then asked me how I was doing at university. I told her I was fine. She asked if I knew that the college fund her mother had mentioned was actually set up by my dad for her. I nodded and told her I had overheard the conversation the night her mother came alone to speak with my dad, which had initially raised my suspicions about them. Mary informed me that she had returned the entire fund to my dad and asked him never to contact her again. She said she found his actions deeply disturbing and couldn't accept anyone else as her father. She assured me that she had fully rejected him. My uncle grimaced, clearly still angry, and told me how, on the night he discovered everything, he drove to my dad's house, ready to beat him to death. However, Mary stopped him, and because he loved her so much, he held back. Otherwise, my dad, he said, would be 6 feet under. I understood how frustrating it must have been for him to have raised his little girl for so long, only to discover she wasn't biologically his. What my father had done was the ultimate betrayal between brothers. After my conversation with Mary and my uncle, I felt much better about my decision to cut ties with my dad. As for my siblings and me, We are doing well. The three of us are family and will always support each other. We talk regularly and are planning to find jobs in the same city in the future so we can live together. Update 4. Before getting into the actual update, since it's been 3 weeks since I last wrote, I'll address some questions people had about my uncle. I didn't explain his side of the story before, but since I talked about my dad's side, it seems fair to share both. To start, my uncle and aunt had an open relationship. But there were certain rules, and none of them allowed my aunt to sleep with someone they both knew, especially my father, because that would have been extremely awkward. For him, it was a double betrayal despite the open marriage, as he never expected something like this. He had thought he'd finally been able to have a daughter, only to find out she had been conceived with his brother. That's my uncle's side of the story. Now, as for my father, he visited Jason. If you remember, Jason had been the least angry, although he wasn't exactly happy with everything either. My father visited him to talk. Before that, he had been writing to all of us, including Brett and me, but I had blocked him. As for Brett, honestly, I don't know what he did. Jason told us everything about our father's visit, which was surprising even to him. He said our father tried to apologize and, to summarize, claimed that it had all been a mistake and that he never planned for it to happen. It just did, blah, blah, blah. Basically, the usual excuses people make when they get caught in situations like this. He also said he never cheated on our mother and didn't want to hurt us, which is why he never revealed the secret. Lastly, he mentioned the college fund, explaining that he created it in case my uncle found out the truth and decided to disinherit Mary. It was meant to be a safety net for her if something like this happened. But if I'm honest, I don't think what he said is entirely true, or at least not completely. It doesn't explain why he set up a college fund for her and not for us. There's clear favoritism there. I'm also not entirely convinced he didn't cheat on my mother, considering how comfortable he seemed with my uncle and aunt's open marriage. The only two people who could confirm that are my aunt and my dad. I guess that will remain one of those secrets they take to the grave. Regardless, none of this is enough for me to forgive him. Even if everything he said is true, there are still lies and betrayals that have caused immense pain. Jason seems to feel similarly. While he was willing to listen to our father, it's not like he forgave him either. That's all I know for now.